Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Patty Katz. I am the president of Reach Out America. Just to fill you in on a few things, on October 2nd, to coincide with the Women's March in Washington, Reach Out America organized a rally for women's reproductive justice at the Firefighters Park in Great Neck. Close to 200 people showed up, along with many of our elected officials. Nina Gordon with her guitar, Rita and I singing behind her. We started the crowd with protest songs, and while we were singing Blowing in the Wind, somebody tapped on my shoulder, and when I looked, it was Senator Chuck Schumer, so I damn near died. He put his arms around me, we started swaying and singing, and when we were done, he sang his own version of Times They Are Changing, and then delivered a crowd-raising speech to protect women's and abortion rights. It was just a really remarkable day. We had our guest speakers were Angelica Wu, who is a junior from Great Neck North High School, and she spoke from the heart with concerns for young women from her generation. And then Jocasta Molina Schneider, she's the Vice President of Community Engagement at Planned Parenthood of Greater New York. She gave a very inspiring speech. So it was really a tremendous day, leaving those who attended with hope and a call to action. So several people who were there became members. So we have some new members, and we're very happy to welcome them and hope some of you are with us here today. It's always very exciting for us to have new members, as we need your activism, your vision, and your passion. So just a quick update on what's been going on around the country with our crazy government and such. The message that one of our board members really wanted us to clearly bring home is that the $28 trillion debt ceiling that's needing to be raised is the Republicans, again, they're willing to spend the money, but not only do they not want to pay their bills, but they are basically holding the Democratic co-signers hostage as well. And yesterday, the House temporarily fast-tracked legislation allowing the Treasury Department to keep paying loans. But this is going to run out like in the beginning of December, and then they'll have to try to raise it again. And yesterday, Janet Yellen, our Secretary of Treasury, she warned us that the economy would fall into a recession if Congress fails to address the federal government's borrowing limit before an unprecedented default of the US debt. So that's pretty serious stuff. So hopefully it'll get signed, but it's pretty much a stalemate right now. So last week, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp went down around the world, and people went crazy, and everybody ran over to Twitter to discuss that and post everything. So it was kind of a fun day for the internet, and it's all up and running, everything's fine. So it's all back and smooth. So, and really good news is that Merck has just come out with saying that they have a pill that would actually help in healing COVID. And hopefully they'll get that passed soon, and we'll be able to use it when needed. So anyway, we have a terrific speaker today. So I'd like to introduce Richard Kessel. He is the chairman of the Nassau County Industrial Development Association. He formerly helmed the New York Power Authority Agency, the Long Island Power Authority, and New York State Consumer Protection Board. So we will have, after he's speaking, we'll have a little question and answer period, which is, if you look below, you'll see a Q&A. So if you want to start thinking about what you want to ask him, you just go onto that Q&A and type it when we're done. I will try to get to as many as possible given the time we have. So thank you very much, and please welcome Richard Kessel. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I had a comment a little bit. I was thinking when you were talking about your activist march for women's rights and singing Blowing in the Wind. One of my dear friends in life has been Peter Yarrow of Peter, Paul, and Mary, who sang Blowing in the Wind. I know Bob Dylan did it, and a number of other people did it, but Peter was a great friend, I'm still in touch with him, and Noel Paul Stuckey, and unfortunately Mary passed away a number of years ago, but they, you talk about Reach Out America and all the movements that are out there. there's nothing better than Peter, Paul, and Mary, and just great friends of mine. Let me introduce myself. I'm Richard Kessel. I'm currently chairman of the Nassau County Industrial Development Agency. I wish we would have met in person. I know the COVID restrictions that we're all undergoing. Everything is different. Every entity is different. I know that we couldn't do this in person. And I will say that I'd love to have an opportunity to do this in person, maybe in a few months or next year. I am currently the chairman of the Nassau County Industrial Development Agency. I'm actually here. It looks like I'm in the woods somewhere, but I'm actually here in my office in Mineola. Just to tell you a little bit about the IDA, it is a state agency, but it is affiliated with Nassau County. So I am actually appointed to the board and to chairman by our Nassau County Executive Laura Curran. So Laura and I have known each other for many, many years. We worked together on a lot of projects, even when she was on the county legislature, and she has asked me to head the IDA. It's a board of 7 members and a very diverse board. And our job is to promote economic development in the county by creating new jobs, getting companies that are already here to expand and add jobs, to attract new companies to come to Nassau County, and to retain companies that might want to leave for a variety of reasons. And we have certain abilities to help businesses in regards to keeping them here by giving them tax incentives. There's a misnomer about the IDA that somehow we lower someone's taxes. That's just not true. We don't lower anyone's taxes. What we are able to do is give tax incentives, for instance, pilots or payments in lieu of taxes, as a way to keep people and companies here in the county. In most instances, the pilot payments exceed the amount of money that the company is currently paying in property taxes. And I think that that's an important point to make. And we can help companies that want to come here by giving them a limited number of years of property tax relief through the payments in lieu of taxes. And again, I think the benefit is that we can freeze taxes for several years, and then the taxes will go up ultimately by inflation for the next number of years. Typically, our payments in lieu of taxes, pilot payments, can be for 10, 15, or 20 years. Usually, sometimes they're a little longer than that. And it gives a company that might want to come to Nassau County but can't because they can't afford the taxes, the ability to come here. They still make pilot payments to the county, to the school districts, to the local villages like Great Neck Plaza or Great Neck or Port Washington or Freeport, whatever the village happens to be. But it's an attraction to try to get companies to move here. And I think that's critically important. We also focus a lot on housing and transit-oriented development. And I think that's a critical component because a lot of our young people go to school here, but then can't afford to live here. And so one of the things that the Laura Curran County Executive has asked us to focus on is to create affordable workforce housing, transit-oriented developed housing. In other words, housing near, for instance, a Long Island Railroad station, so that young people can commute into work, but come back home into Nassau County. And as an example of that, we just approved one of the biggest projects in our history, the Superblock in Long Beach, which is not far from the Long Beach Railroad Station. It consists of condominiums and rental units, affordable units. Ultimately, it will likely bring more than 1,000 new people into the city of Long Beach, people who are going to shop in Long Beach, eat in local restaurants, avail themselves of services. And the great thing about it is it will inject tens of millions of dollars into the Long Beach budget and economy. So it benefits the city and it benefits all the local businesses there. And we're looking at a number of housing projects now, including several on the North Shore, in Great Neck, Roslyn. We're just about finished. We just helped support a major housing project in Lynbrook, the great village of Lynbrook, right near the train station, replacing an old, dilapidated, short stay motel. So we focus greatly on new projects, new businesses coming here. And, you know, one of the things that we focused on, in addition to the Superblock, which, by the way, was a vacant eyesore on the boardwalk in Long Beach for over 40 years. We also worked out a deal with Amazon to open up a major last mile facility over 200,000 square feet on the old Ciro wire site in Syosset. It was a contaminated brownfield site. The site is going to be capped, environmentally positive, and we're going to have Amazon last mile facility there with hundreds and hundreds of jobs for people. And in this economy, it's important to create as many jobs as possible. And I'm thrilled to say that that project is currently undergoing construction and is moving very quickly. And we're likely to see that finished early to mid next year. And again, it's a site, the Ciro wire site, right off the Long Island Expressway. Many of you have probably passed it. It's been vacant for over 30 years. So I think it's critical to create economic development. The other thing I should say is we're also able to offer a sales tax exemption so that, for instance, a company like Amazon is building a facility, they're exempt from sales taxes on equipment that they need to purchase, conveyor belts, lighting, whatever else they need. And finally, we're able to give a mortgage tax exemption to help those who need that as well. So the IDA is there to help grow business and grow economic development. And I think it's important to know that while we are an independent entity, we work very closely with Laura Curran and her administration, Evelyn Simmons, who is her Deputy County Executive for Economic Development. We have a vision, and Laura has a vision, and we combine that vision together. And I want to add one other thing, and that is that as far as construction jobs, we strive to encourage the use of our local union labor workforce. And we're very successful. As an example, at the Amazon site in Ciro Wire, it's 100% union labor. Hundreds of union workers, the building trades, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, they're all local union people being put to work at a very important time when we need to do that as well. And so, and I want to thank our union members who are very dedicated. They build a quality project, and we encourage, we can't require it, but we work behind the scenes with unions all the time so that they're involved in many of these projects. And construction jobs are important just as permanent jobs are as well. So that's really what the IDA was. I'll also spend a few minutes on energy because I know that was a topic of discussion that we want to talk about. And I was very fortunate in my life. I've been able to work for 6 governors. I don't even think my good friend Robert Zimmerman, who I know is listening, worked for 6 governors. But he's national in scope. I'm more local. But I had great opportunity to work with governors, Hugh Carey, Mario Cuomo, George Pataki, all terrific people. And as you mentioned, I was fortunate. My first major state job was to be the head of the Consumer Protection Board, which, by the way, doesn't exist any longer. There is a small consumer protection wing in the Department of State. But in the heyday of the 1980s, the Consumer Protection Board was an agency that represented the public and the consumers before the Public Service Commission to fight utility rate increases, whether it was the old Long Island Lighting Company, or you may remember New York Telephone Company, Ma Bell, which is now Verizon, some of the water companies, Con Ed. We were very active in representing consumers in that area. We had a staff of, I guess, close to 40, 45 people. And we also helped consumers. I worked very closely with then Senator Bruno, Governor Cuomo, a number of other people to create the lemon law that's still in effect today for used cars, new cars. We did the bottle bill, 5-cent deposit to help the environment. We did all sorts of environmental things at the Consumer Protection Agency. And I wish it still existed in the form that it used to exist, but it was a lot of fun doing that. I then had the unique fortune to head the Long Island Power Authority, actually several times. In the initial entity, LIPA was a consumer advocate entity, wasn't a utility. It was meant to be a utility ultimately, but LIPA's major role early on was to close and decontaminate the Shoreham nuclear power plant, which some people don't even remember anymore. It's still out there in Shoreham, out in Suffolk County, but it was a big issue on Long Island in the 70s and 80s. And ultimately, Governor Mario Cuomo did a deal to close the Shoreham plant. LIPA was then charged with decontaminating it. It was the first major nuclear plant commercially operated in the country to be decommissioned. And we did it ahead of schedule and under budget. Ultimately, LIPA acquired the old Long Island Lighting Company, which was, I think, the bane of everyone's existence. You know, if you look at Long Island's history, there are a few things that were more indelible on the Long Island landscape than Long Island Lighting Company and Shoreham. And the Long Island Power Authority eventually acquired the Long Island Lighting Company, at least most of it, and took it over. And I came back. I actually was fired by my good friend today, George Pataki, Governor Pataki, great guy, great governor. But we didn't see eye to eye at the beginning, so I was dismissed, but then brought back a couple of years later by him to be the chairman and CEO of LIPA. We then acquired Loco for several billions of dollars, and we became the electric company on Long Island. And I spent about 9 years as head of LIPA as we worked our way through it. I'm very proud of what we did. We lowered electric rates by 20%. We improved service quality. Service was never any better than when we took it over. We invested over $2 billion in hardening the system, making it more reliable. And we did a lot of things. We introduced energy efficiency, solar energy. We were the first to call for offshore wind. Back in the early 2000s, we actually started to permit the first offshore wind project in the United States of America. Unfortunately, my friend, but I wasn't happy with him, Governor Spitzer, decided to cancel the project. I think it was very short-sighted at the time. I'm glad that we're doing offshore wind now. It's something we would have been the first territory in the entire country, in all of North America, to have an offshore wind up and running now, if that hadn't been canceled. But we did a lot of good things. We introduced solar energy and renewable energy, which I think is the way of the future. We were ahead of our time at LIPA. Ultimately, after I left LIPA, I was very, very fortunate to be nominated and confirmed as the head of the New York Power Authority, which is a statewide power authority, which has over 1,000 employees and has power plants and transmission lines throughout the state of New York, from Buffalo and the North Country down through the Hudson Valley, Con Ed, onto Long Island. And again, we did a lot of things. I worked very closely with Governor Patterson and then Governor Andrew Cuomo to promote reliable, renewable energy. And I think that that's an important component of what we did when we were there. I think that, you know, as far as the future is concerned, I'm still very involved in energy issues. I happen to, in addition to my work for Nassau County and the IDA, I also do some consulting work for Next Era Energy, which is the largest renewable energy company in the United States, one of the largest in the world, that it does wind, solar, battery storage, et cetera. And I can tell you that our future is linked very closely to renewable energy. And I'm glad that the rest of the country is actually catching up to what LIPA looked to do back in the early 2000s, which is to create renewable energy sources to reduce and ultimately eliminate our reliance on fossil fuels. Listen, fossil fuels have improved over the years. We've moved greatly and significantly away from coal and oil and more into natural gas, which is much cleaner, but it still has emissions. And I think ultimately the goal, and I think we have it here in New York State and in the rest of the country, is to be completely independent and rely on resources, including solar energy, wind energy, fuel cells, battery storage. That's the way to go. And I just want to talk for a few minutes about some of the projects that are being worked on here in New York and on Long Island. You know, offshore wind is now a reality. I wish it hadn't been postponed back in 2004 and 2005, but it's here again, and a number of companies have won bids to erect offshore wind turbines in the Atlantic Ocean. Actually, ironically, while many of them are being promoted by Long Island, LIPA, and New York State, most of them are not off of our shores. One is, actually two will ultimately be being built by Equinor off the South Shore of Jones Beach, Atlantic Beach, Robert Moses, etc., 15 miles out. And what will happen is that the turbines will be, you can see them, but barely see them. And they'll be connected through underwater cables to substations that will be eventually connected by transmission lines into the Long Island grid. And I think that the most important part of this is that we're going to be encouraging battery storage to do that. Because it's important to understand that the wind always doesn't blow, the sun always doesn't shine, and Long Island is a summer peaking utility, which means that on a hot summer day, we need the most electricity. And sometimes we don't have enough. We do have some problems out on the East End, and that's why 2 batteries, 5-megawatt batteries, were built out in East Hampton and Montauk as a way to store energy. So what happens is, when the sun's out and the wind is blowing, the energy can go into the battery and be stored. So at night and during windy periods or sunny periods, and then when you need extra energy because it's really hot out there, the battery produces it and emits it into the grid. I think that battery storage is one of the most important parts of our future. It will help renewable energy in many various ways. And I commend LIPA today, and LIPA still exists today, and I'll spend a few minutes on what it is today, for issuing an RFP to do battery storage at various locations around Long Island. Because I think in the end, the combination of solar, and solar is growing beyond belief. When I was at LIPA, we started the Solar Pioneer project, rooftop solar. I think I remember standing there with Steve Israel, who was a congressman at the time, and we dedicated the 1,000th solar roof Now there are tens of thousands of solar roofs around Long Island. We give rebates, which is something that we began to do at LIPA again back in the early 2000s. And solar energy is going gangbusters right now. And I encourage people to look into it. I know that not every house can be solar, but solar is growing in leaps and bounds. And I think that that's a great thing to do. We've got a number of offshore wind projects. It's projected that we could have as much as 9,000 megawatts of offshore wind over the next decade or two. I think that's great. I think we have to be careful, though, about the cost. I think that we really need to know exactly what the cost is. I know a lot of people say, no matter what the cost is, we need to get off of fossil fuels. Well, I do agree we need to get off of fossil fuels. Cost is still an important thing for many Long Island homeowners and businesses out there, that have trouble paying their electric bills. And I think that if we're going to do a lot of this offshore wind, that the cost ought to be spread out more across the entire state. When there's a transmission upgrades, and this is going to benefit not just Long Island, but the entire state, that the state needs to share with us the cost of these projects and the cost of transmission of the electricity there. If what it means ultimately is that Long Island is going to pick up 70 or 75% of the cost, we won't be able to afford it. Our electric bills will go through the roof, and that's something that we don't want to see. So I think it's important to be very vigilant in that regard. Today, just and I'll end in a couple of minutes because I know there are some questions. It's important to point out that LIPA is really a holding company. When I was there at LIPA, we worked with Keyspan, you may remember them, and then National Grid to run the electric system. But LIPA pretty much managed the system on a day-to-day basis with the several thousand great employees that originally worked for Lilco, then worked for Keyspan, then worked for Grid, and now work for PSEG. But PSEG is a contractor to LIPA. LIPA still owns the electric system and is the electric company. One of the differences is that Andrew Cuomo, when he was governor, decided to strip away LIPA's authority in terms of, its name on trucks and on your bill. When you get a bill today, you get it from PSEG, but they are not your electric company. LIPA is your electric company. It's something that I disagreed vehemently with Governor Andrew Cuomo about. He ultimately won out. I don't think the arrangement has worked as well as it should have. We had some huge problems initially with National Grid there and Sandy, and of course, Isaias last year, and PSEG. There were a lot of problems. I happen to think there has been a lot of talk about municipalization. Let LIPA own and run the whole thing. And I think there may be a time for that in the future. However, for the time being, I'd like there to be more competitive process to see who could best run the system for us. I think there are a lot of great employees that, again, they currently operate under PSEG, but many of them are Long Islanders. They do a great job. I think some of the managers do a great job as well. But I do think under our new governor, Governor Hochul, and she's someone who's doing a great job. And she used to be from Western New York. When I was at NYPER, I was up in Buffalo every other week. I love Buffalo. Love the North Country, Messina, Watertown. I was up all the time. Every week I was traveling to different parts of the state. And we have a lot of great upstate people, including Governor Hochul. And I think they're doing a great job. But I do think we have to take another look over the next few years as to what do we want to be when we grow up, energy-wise on Long Island? Do we want to do it public? Do we want to do it private? The hybrid model worked for a number of years, but it may be time to take a look at alternative ways of delivering energy. And that's something that I hope will be done over the next few years under our new governor and some new leadership on Long Island. And So that, in a nutshell, are some of the things that we do. I'm thrilled to be with the IDA. It's going to be my last government job, but it's something that it's exciting, bringing new business, economic development, and growth to Long Island. I'm proud to be working with my friend, Laura Curran. I think she's doing a great job up there in Mineola. We're actually right across the street. I actually sometimes see her through my window, getting into her car, and I wave to her all the time, but she's doing a great job. And I think that it's important that the county executive and her administration promote economic development. We don't want to force things on people, and we want to make sure that the public has input, because sometimes projects are not beneficial to the community. And we have to be very careful. We have to weigh the pros and the cons of things, whether it's an environmental issue, it's traffic, it's revenues to the school district. So not all economic development projects are good, but where we can promote economic development, create jobs, and improve the economy, I think we've got a great future here in Nassau County.
Well, thank you so much. That, it's wonderful that you have such a broad perspective, that you're where you are right now, as well as having all this experience with energy. So we really appreciate what you said, and it's very hopeful, and I thank you. And you touched on so many things that I know that people on this meeting are very inquisitive about. So let me get to some questions. I see that there are a lot here, and we have some from our board as well. As far as the, let's see, let's start with just environmentally, a question. Rita asked, why do we lag so far behind in other nations? And, I travel Europe, and I agree with her a lot. You see everywhere, you see the wind vanes and the whole thing. I'm going to add to that. Sandy also asked about, what about in Long Island geothermal? You didn't mention that as well for sustainable energy. So what are some of your thoughts on that? Like, are we catching up, do you feel? Because I know Europe has been doing this for 30, 40 years. There's so much ahead of us. And
Yeah, no, I think you're right. First, just to touch on geothermal, I love geothermal energy. I did one of the first large geothermal projects at the Inn at Fox Hollow when I was at LIPA. Geothermal uses underground heat to provide energy above ground. And I think it's a great technology. I think we're using more of it than we used to, but we could use more of it. I'm a big supporter of geothermal energy. We do lag behind Europe. I mean, just take offshore wind as a great example of that. There have been offshore windmills in Europe for decades. And right now, we've got a couple of pilots. I think I was actually out to see the one off of Block Island out there. I think there are 5 turbines out there, but we've lagged because I think, more so years ago than now, that there's an attitude that, build windmills, but I don't want to see them. When we tried to build the first offshore wind project in the United States off the South Shore, at the time, the technology was very nascent. So you really couldn't site them more than 4 or 5 miles offshore. And we did propose a project with a company that won a bid, was at the time called Florida Power Resources. It's now NextEra Energy. And we went through a permitting process. We almost had it permitted, but a lot of people moaned about it and said, oh my God, how could you do that off the coast of Jones Beach? I don't want to see windmills. There were people in some of the South Shore communities, a lot of our elected officials, I won't mention any names because today they're supporting wind energy, so maybe they've come around to it, that slowed us from doing it. Ultimately, Governor Pataki was a big supporter of it. He was a big environmentalist, maybe the most environmentally sensitive governor we've ever had. But when he decided not to run again and Governor Spitzer came in, he unfortunately listened to the complaints by people who didn't want to see them and made LIPA cancel that project. And I think it was a big mistake. And I have to be honest with you. I think if we had gone forward with that, it was almost permitted. It was about 85 to 90% permitted. If we had gone forward with that, it would have been ready to operate commercially by 2009, 2008. And it would have encouraged other wind projects sooner than what we have. So, but the good news is that we're finally caught up and that offshore wind is now becoming a reality. And while I think there probably will be some delay in it, I think you will start seeing some major offshore wind projects in the next 2 to 3 years going into commercial operation here. Again, off the shore of Long Island and off the shore of New England as well. But there was a lot of NIMBYism that was objected to. And, I understand that. It's funny because my 6th grade teacher, when I went to Lakeside Elementary School in Merrick, my 6th grade teacher, Jay Petey, was the leader against the offshore wind project on Long Island. He was part of a movement to stop it. And, he felt, and I understood his position, that, I don't want to go to Jones Beach and look out and see windmills. I happen to think windmills are a thing of beauty. And, I'm a South Shore guy, but I live in Merrick, and I go to Jones Beach all the time. And I always see oil tankers out there lined up all the way from the city out to past Jones Beach. So I think windmills are a lot more beautiful than that. But at the time, a lot of people disagreed with that. So I think it deferred offshore wind for many years. I think Europe was much more open to offshore wind than we were, but we're catching up quickly. And I do think in the next 5 years or so, we're going to see a lot of offshore wind off of our shores, providing electricity to not just the people of Long Island, but the entire region.
Oh, great. Well, that's good to hear. That's good news. Roy asked a question about the wind blades, that when they become obsolete and they need to be disposed of, is there a way that we've come up with a safe and recyclable way to do that?
Yeah, there is. I mean, people have to recognize one thing there, and there have been some concerns about decommissioning or disassembling these wind turbines, but all power plants, when their life is over, and yeah, some of these fossil fuel plants are 40, 50 years old. They've been updated and improved, and they're much cleaner than they used to be, but ultimately they're taken down. Ironically, the Shoreham plant, the nuclear plant that was ultimately decontaminated and closed, still sits there as a monument, I think, to man's inability to listen to the public and to do what's right in a democratic society. I mean, that was a disaster. It wound up, Shoreham wound up costing us, and that's Long Island primarily, $6 billion that we're still paying for in our electric bills, that we're going to pay for decades to come. And I was one of the people who opposed the Shoreham nuclear power plant from safety reasons, but more for economic reasons. Shoreham originally was supposed to cost about $270 million, and it kept going up and up and up in cost. And I think the government, the state, the Public Service Commission in our state made a huge mistake by continuing to approve rate increases to pay for it. By the time it was finished, it was $6 billion, and we're still paying for it. Terrible. But, the point is that a lot of these old plants are ultimately decommissioned. For instance, in Astoria, one of our large generating plants, the Paletti plant, was decommissioned and taken down. So we are able to decommission these plants. And I think by the time some of these turbines will be decommissioned 20 or 30 years from now, it'll be an easy process. They'll be recycled and create jobs for people as well. And by the way, I want to add one thing. I think the offshore wind industry, some people ask me, why not onshore wind? Well, if you think it's hard to site offshore wind, good luck putting up a windmill on Long Island. It's difficult. I actually, when I was at LIPA, we actually did a few windmills out on the East End on farm property. I remember there was a farm family called the Zay family, and we put a windmill up there. Governor Pataki had the guts to do that. We put up several windmills out there, but for the most part, there is not enough land to put onshore windmills on Long Island. So it's got to go offshore. But we are going to get a better handle on decommissioning these projects so that when the windmill ultimately is past its useful life, that it'll be taken down and decommissioned and a lot of its parts recycled. Remember one thing though, that these wind turbines, which are huge, have hundreds, thousands of parts, and many of those parts are going to be made here in New York and on Long Island. One of the things that the IDA is doing is taking a leading role in creating a supply chain where companies on Long Island can create, and it doesn't have to be a blade. It could be a nut, a bolt, a widget that they're going to create jobs on Long Island. In fact, one of the things, and I have to be honest with you about it, I'm disturbed that some of the offshore wind manufacturing facilities are not here on Long Island. And, you know, from my perspective, if we're going to host these wind turbines, they ought to be here on Long Island, not up in Albany, not in Brooklyn, but here on Long Island. And one of the things that I'm glad to see some of our local business groups like the LIA and the Association for a Better Long Island are pushing for is to have some manufacturing and supply chain work done here on Long Island. There's no reason why some of these jobs can't be here on Long Island. And one of the things that we're doing, Laura Curran, the IDA, is we are promoting and pushing for these jobs to be here on Long Island. I'm glad that some of them are in Brooklyn, in Albany. I want them here where they belong. And so that's something that we all should be working towards.
That's terrific. I totally agree with you too. I'm going to try to segue into bridge your expertise out there. Eileen asked, why isn't there new construction? Why aren't they using solar energy? You know, which is a big thing. I see all of this building going on. You have the Avalon, you have all of these places in Great Neck. We're a Great Neck based organization. And I know we're sort of segueing into the questions that we're going to have about what's all the building that's going on. Why isn't there an incentive that insists, like why didn't the Avalon have one solar panel? I mean, I work next door at the sewer plant and we have solar panels, you know, throughout, and we're using it, and it's such a no-brainer. So why isn't that something that's being mandated either through Nassau County or through your organization, that everything that's being brought in has to have like some sort of lead level of you know, sustainability in these buildings? It makes no sense why they're going back to that. They're not using it forward thinking.
First of all, a number of them are becoming solar. LIPA and PSEG do offer incentives. We work with LIPA and PSEG on projects. There are projects that are being built that right now that we're looking at solar roofs. As an example, you know, we've got all these Amazon facilities, and we can debate Amazon versus local downtowns. I do want to put in a plug for our local downtowns. We do a lot of work. I work closely with County Executive Curran on revitalizing downtowns. We're, you know, looking at a lot of things. We're working with Mayor Rosen, the Village of Great Neck Plaza. I talked just yesterday to Mayor Brawl and the Village of Great Neck about doing revitalizing downtowns and helping businesses. But we are, you know, seeing an increase in the number of these Amazon warehouses and last mile facilities that are perfect for solar roofs. And so we are encouraging that to be looked at. Mandating them, I think, is right now very difficult because it would put an added cost on development. Right now, we're struggling to keep businesses here and to attract new businesses. So, but we do encourage it. And I will tell you that, as an example, the Amazon facility that's being built in Syosset at the Cyril Wire site, I did ask Amazon if they would consider putting a solar roof on it, and they are considering it. And I do think that some of these, you got to remember something about solar roofs. If it's a commercial facility, it likely has to be a flat roof.
Yeah, let me
for
just
that
interject.
to work.
I was talking about the Avalon, the building down here, the residential building. I'm talking about
Well,
these.
that's really up, but that's really up to Avalon. I mean, I was not
Why-
here at the IDA, so
Okay,
we
but I'm
didn't.
saying, because they're all asking for these pilot programs and these incentives.
Well, they
So
have the
that should be
opportunity.
part, is there a way to make it part of the incentive? If you're going to get these tax breaks or whatever, there needs to be a level of environmental sustainability in your building. There's all different things that could be going into buildings at this point. That's
Well,
what
we do have a new policy. Actually, County Legislator Sheila Bino proposed a policy where if you install environmentally beneficial projects, that we can exempt them from sales tax. And that could include a solar roof, a water treatment system, water purifier, etc. So we are doing that. We just adopted the program a month ago. So it'll take a few months to get moving, but I will tell you as an example that I don't want to mention the project, but they've come to us and talked to us about getting an exemption for sales tax to do a large solar roof on the project. So I think it's beginning, it's in its stage. I think you got to be careful though about mandating things, because when you mandate things, then it increases the cost. And right now, our struggle here on Long Island is property taxes. They're high costs. And while I think that there have been a number of steps taken to lower them, to keep them from increasing, we don't want to do things which would increase the cost and a developer turn around and say, you're mandating it, I'm not building it. And do it in Queens, or do it in Brooklyn, or do it upstate or in Westchester. So I think we have to be very careful. But I think you used the right word, encourage. And we encourage the IDA, we encourage all projects that we're doing that are compatible to have, an example, a solar roof. One of the things we haven't talked about, fuel cells. I happen to like the idea of a fuel cell as well, and encourage the use of fuel cells, battery storage, whatever. So I think that as we go forward, I think we could do a lot more to encourage renewable energy from taking place.
Great. So I'm going to try to put this is a question. Many people have been asking similar questions. I have a list of them. And so I'm going to try to combine it. There's a great concern in Great Neck with all the developing. We think it's overdeveloping. A lot of the residents are very much against it, especially in the village of Great Neck. Now we're talking about in Thomaston with the Ford Tower building. So there's several questions. One, zoning. Great Neck has always been 3 floors, three stories of buildings. Now there's, a lot of buildings are asking for 4 stories. And the Ford Tower is 6 stories. And Great Neck residents are upset for many reasons. One, there's always an environmental impact, and it doesn't seem like I've read some of these impact studies and they all say, oh, it was studied, there's not going to be any effect in traffic. It all seems like there's a falseness in these environmental impact things. So the question, I guess the question is, what can we as residents, we're fighting this, and I know that you've put a hold to review the Ford building, which is terrific that you're going to be looking at it and seeing if it's possible, what needs to be changed. But the residents don't really, it's not that we don't want development, but at the same time, we would like you also to encourage things like, we don't have a supermarket. One of our people asked, what about a supermarket? How could you encourage bringing a Trader Joe's? We don't have a main supermarket in Great Neck. It's crazy. We have this, a few little small kosher markets and a crazy, terrible, associated market that we go to, but nothing big. So there's many questions. It's a, several tiered question that I'm sorry I'm throwing at you, but there's so many people asking all of these questions about the zoning and the environmental impact, and how can we be protected as residents so that we could have development, we could have a better infrastructure within our community, we could have our supermarkets and stores thrive, because they're not, we've got so much, no store, there's so many stores that are closed. So how can we like really revitalize our community without overblowing it? I guess that's what people, I hope I'm reflecting what residents are worried about.
Well, yeah, I certainly know about it and know the issues. First of all, I want to correct a couple of things. First of all, we have not been asked to review the Ford Tower. I know that I've been told that some people think that that project is before the IDA. It isn't at this point. They may come to us at some point, but at this moment, there's no application for any tax incentives for the Ford Tower. There is, and I know it's controversial, a project on Middle Neck Road in the village of Great Neck, not Great Neck Plaza, but the village of Great Neck, to build housing, retail, office space on a portion of Middle Neck Road. And there's been a lot of disagreement about that project. It's important to point out that the IDA is not a zoning entity. We have nothing to do whatsoever with zoning. Our only ability is to approve tax incentives for projects. And you are correct that there is a project in the Gesher project in the village of Great Neck that came to us for help in terms of tax incentives to build a project on Middle Neck Road. And at our last meeting, we tabled the project to take a further look at it. And I will tell you that there are pros and cons that have been expressed to us. We did get a number of emails, letters opposing the project for a variety of reasons, whether it's zoning, it's traffic, it's environmental, it's a visual, but those are issues that aren't our purview. It's the purview of the Board of Zoning Appeals. And the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I spoke to one of the Board of Zoning members yesterday, and I also spoke to the Mayor, Mayor Brow, and had a very courteous and good conversation. They approved it. Doesn't mean we have to approve it, but they approved it. And our job is to determine whether or not that project or any project is eligible for IDA assistance. And because we did get a lot of opposition to the project, although now we're getting a lot of support for the project. The developer is generating some support from some public officials and the community. There are many sides to the issue. Ultimately, that's a decision that elected and appointed officials in the village of Great Neck have to make. Our decision is, do we help by providing tax incentives and a pilot payment, sales tax exemption? The developer says that without it, they can't build there. So people come to the IDA and says, well, if you don't approve it, we don't build it. But so it's a tough line to hold with that particular regard. The voting, the Board of Zoning Appeals of the village and the village board approved that project. And if you ask, what can the public do? Well, the public can go to the public meetings of the village board and the Board of Zoning Appeals and object to it and oppose it. Now, I know a lot of people have said, well, we did that, but they approved it anyway. But that's local government. That's what local government does. Normally, the IDA might have approved that project, but there was so much opposition to it that I felt uncomfortable. And I think my fellow board members felt uncomfortable about it. And we decided to postpone it, to take a further look, to reach out to the village. I have to give credit to the mayor of the village. He reached out to me. We've had several phone conversations about it. I'll let him say what his position is on it. We are looking at the project, but it puts us in a position that frankly, we very rarely are in, which is we're in the position of deciding whether or not the project should be built. That's really not the job of the IDA. The IDA, that's the job of the village and the Board of Zoning Appeals. They have made a decision. You can agree with it or disagree with it. I can agree with it or disagree with it. Our job is only to decide whether or not there should be tax incentives. I think a lot of people expected us to approve the project. We didn't. We tabled it. It will come back to us in the future, and we'll have to see where we go from there. We are looking at the project. We're looking at the pilot and the length of the pilot, some of the environmental issues that are out there. So we're taking a careful look at it. We are not a rubber stamp. And one thing I think is important, and some people will be happy, some people won't. We don't rubber stamp something, because it's the village or an elected official tells us they want us to do it. We take a careful review about it. We probably go beyond scope than most IDAs do. But I think this is a project that we're taking a much closer look at this point.
Great. Let me ask you a question about this project. Will there be any low-income housing in this project or being offered?
Well, I don't know if that's bad or good, but not a low-income housing. No.
Affordable.
No.
I'm sorry.
Well, affordable housing, yes. We will not approve any projects without at least 10% of affordable housing.
Okay.
So there will be a percentage of those units that'll be affordable if we approve it. That's our requirement. I don't know. Villages around the county have different requirements. Some have an affordable housing requirement, a percentage. Some don't. But as far as we're concerned, we would require a percentage of affordable housing, but most of it would not be affordable, as far as I understand the project.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, so we've run out of time. It's 1:30, but I want to thank you very much for being here. And we really appreciate your thoughts on this, because it's something I know a lot of our residents are really concerned about. And I just want to remind people that our next meeting will be November, please join us for next month, November 10th. It's at 7 p.m. We're trying to mix up our meetings, so we do some at 12:30, some at 7 p.m. so we can get different people. If people are working, they can join us later. So we're going to have Tanya Brindell. We've had her before. She's a staff attorney at the Pace Women's Justice Center. She's a wonderful speaker. She'll be discussing the ongoing human rights challenges, violence, and bigotry that immigrants face. So please come and join us next month. And we hope you can, if you'd like to be a member, to go onto our website, reachout-america.com. And thank you all again for joining us. Thank you, Richard Kessel. And please come back. We will have you back again, because you're a wealth of information, and we would love to have you when it's not on Zoom. So we'll do this again. So thank you for being here today. And everyone have a great month and be well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.